So let's assume that you are working with an enterprise and you're looking at a host of desktop systems or maybe even servers. And let's say that you are able to get a password dump and you've been able to get into one of the systems and you've dumped the password hashes. Let's say that we were going to do something like Windows SMB, and I can set my R host and then set my L host to be 192.168.86.22. And then if I exploit, I should get a meterpreter shell back. And then what I can do is run post windows gather and then hash dump. And then I'm going to get the hashes dumped from the SAM or the security account manager. And I should get a list of usernames and passwords. I'm just going to grab the hash from one of these users, and then I can exit out of this. And then I'm going to use that hash to authenticate. And let's say that you're targeting another system at this point. I'm going to use the same system because I don't have a large enterprise network. What I'm going to do, though, is use exploit Windows SMB PS exec, and I'm going to set my payload to be Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP. I can set my local host to be 192.168.86.22. I'm going to set my R host to be 192.168.86.69. Then I need to set my SMB user to be the user that we had grabbed the hash from. And then I can set the SMB password. In this case, I don't actually have to crack the password from this hash. I don't have to take the hash and then try to get the password from it. I can just use the hash. Now, this technique has largely been shut down by Microsoft, and it doesn't work all that well anymore on more modern operating systems. And we're going to have a problem with it here. And Metasploit will explain why we are going to have a problem with it. But the concept of pass the hash is generally considered an important one. So, what we're doing is we are trying to authenticate to the server using file sharing protocols. And we pass in the username and then we pass in the hash rather than the password. And since the password is generally going to be hashed anyway before it's sent, what we're doing is we're just sending the hash along. So we don't actually have to get the password from it. Typically, if you are doing this within an enterprise, as this says, I'm actually targeting a Windows XP system. It's something I've got that's just really easy to target. And the problem is that Windows XP systems that are not part of a domain are only going to provide guest privileges to network logins by default. Since I don't have a domain controller here that I could make this a part of, I can't actually send the payload along to get me a meterpreter shell back on the system, but the concept still remains the same. You set the username, you set the password, you use psexec, and then the password, as I mentioned earlier, is going to just be the hash that you were able to get from another system. And then you can use psexec to target other systems using that username and password combination to try to get into other systems that you assume are going to have, for example, the same administrator username and password, because that's going to be common because all of the systems are going to be administered centrally. Passing the hash, as I mentioned, is a really important concept. And what you're really doing is you're just taking a password hash in the way that it is stored within the SAM in Windows, and you're using that hash to pass on to other systems with the assumption that the username and password are going to be the same from one system to another.